hurt or anything. So, oh, you didn't hear my quote. All right, next slide. I'm doing your safety brief, Senior Master Sergeant Drag. Just met Colonel Capper. This is a photo of our leadership team here at the TDC, Colonel Level and Commander. First Sergeant Krause. Yeah, this is my team here. Hey.
Briefing for ethics here today. No opinion expressed. This is part of the Department of Defense, U.S. Army, or National Guard. If you're giving these briefs, I think the JDR still says you're supposed to say that. So that's your ethics portion for today's briefing. Take that ethics credit. Okay, here's my topics outlined. Basically, I'm going to talk to you in the brief time that I've got here a little about interoperability. First off, about how many folks here have deployed or been around National Guard folks before, been in the National Guard? Okay, so how many of you thought they were aliens? We are, but outside of that. Okay, so, you know, we work well, we play well together. You're on the reserve primarily. Dual job, doing thing with the Guard. The Guard's a little different, so my objective here today is to tell you a little bit about the Guard. Army vision. Here's my comment about the Army vision. This, if you read it closely, talks about us fighting one war and deterring others. Back when I started, we were going to win 2 wars and beat the rest of them to a snot anyway. Well, guess what? We have bigger competitors now. This makes the interoperability between all of our functions, between the Army, the Air Force, the Navy, Marines, the Coast Guard, everybody, all of our reserve components and the active components, that much more important. We must play well, fight well, and win. It's critical for our stuff. Look at that Army vision. We've changed our vision. We used to win. We used to figure we're going to fight 2 big wars to win. We're going to fight one to win right now to deter everybody else. Need everybody to don't think we're done. Our priorities, you've seen this slide earlier, it's all about readiness. This isn't a change. Readiness has been here since day 1. Oh my gosh, I was a reforger. Anybody remember a reforger exercise? The return of forces to Germany. What just happened the other day? I just saw this in the clip. We sent 1,500 troops to Germany. Return of forces to Germany, 2019. I did it in 1988. You know, so guess what? We are now back into peer competitors. We're looking at that big war type concept, force on force structures. Readiness is very relevant. If you haven't read Clausewitz, you've never done a good sleep. Okay, so basically Clausewitz and Sun Tzu, read those, analyze them a little bit. They'll give you a little bit of idea how things are working when you talk about the Russians, you talk about us, you talk about the Chinese. These things are very important in the concept of philosophy in combat in war. You know, when we start talking about war is just policy by any other means, essentially, we're really talking about Clausewitz and Sun Tzu and how to win. Some of those pictures up there. Why do I put them up there? Well, this last briefing at Fort Benning when I was there, they said pictures are pretty, so everyone wants to see pretty pictures. Up there in the one corner with the ships, the Decatur is right next to a Chinese ship. I mean, my gosh, these guys 45 meters away, something like that. That's not good, particularly. And I think that's a MiG right over the bow of one of our ships. The Chinese are starting to build their aircraft carriers, and the Chinese PLA, that's the Army, 3.85 million. We combine all of our people together, we've got 1 million. Their Army is 2.58 million. Force on force. That's the structural problem with that. Okay, reaching our priorities. This is where interoperability and basically, a total force concept comes into play. We want to integrate our AC and RC components and the National Guard and everything all together as best as we can in order to establish, a fighting base for our system. Okay, this is a RAND report that I pulled up, and it really talks about a lot of things that we're talking about that Sutton's going to talk about. We're going to start bringing people together in our affiliations that we've got. We're really looking at trying to reduce cultural barriers and distrust. Now, guys, that's when I talk about the aliens, that kind of thing, it's a little bit what it is, because, if you don't know something, you're afraid of it. Gosh, I noticed just today, after 30-odd years, that this is U.S. Army, not National Guard. Shocking, shocking. Now, mind you, I went active duty as a Fort Bliss. Fort Blissers, anybody? Alumni from Fort Bliss, where I launched to reforgers, went into the Guard, did the Guard all this time, and now you know, I'm doing what I am doing now. In my real world side, I'm a judge. So I'm a state court circuit judge out in Oregon. And so, you know, kind of seeing everything on different sides of the picture. But we got to reduce our cultural barriers. We got to be able to get the door open between the Guard, the Reserve, the active component. Somebody comes off the active component status, I want them in the Guard. I do. I really, really do. I want that active component, you know, culture, understanding, and skill set coming in. And I want the Army Reserve to come in, and I want us to rotate. One of my best National Guard guys just went to the Army Reserve. It was a change. He got a better job option, you know, for him to be able to do. So those are things we need to do. Cross-component interactions, we need to be working on those. And here's my little, this is when I start. Facilitate transfers between components. I hear from my Guard people, and I have to fix that, or try to, that we don't want to bring in sometimes somebody from another organization. We don't know who they are. We must do that. We are all in green. So we must, in the Guard, bring in people who want to come in from the Army Reserve. And in the Army Reserve, you should be able to bring people in from the National Guard. Don't be afraid of it. That's what the RAND study says. Facilitate transfers between components that meet the needs of the soldier and the Army. Regionally, you may have a better opportunity to move between a Guard unit to an Army Reserve unit. Now remember, in Guard, you're Title 32, and I'll talk about that just briefly in a little while. Title 32 means that you got to have a state law license for that state. So if you're in, I'll just use the Northwest since I'm familiar, Idaho to Oregon, Washington to Oregon, vice versa, we have reciprocity. It doesn't take very much to get a bar license within the Northwest. Other states, maybe not so much. Maybe, but I'm not going to expect somebody to fly from Wisconsin to Oregon because you have to get licensed in Oregon and kind of that. And much more difficult because my commander called me up in the middle of the night and says, Dan, I'd like you out at Camp Riley at the coast in 24 hours because we're having a big meeting because we're going out the door in 24 hours, that kind of thing. So we have to respond fairly quickly. So it's much more regional in that sense. But you know, within border regions, pretty easy actually. Okay, a little bit more about reserve forces. I'm required that we're an operational force. But what I'm going to talk to you about in the Guard is I'm going to demonstrate a little bit that we're an operational force. TJAG's guidance here, as far as being readiness, you've already heard a little bit from DJAG on that, much more eloquent than I'll be able to talk to you. But focus on the fundamentals, you know, core discipline, soldier skills. I'm going to flip stop soldier skills a little bit. If you haven't seen a compass lately, grab one, read it. You need to know how to use a compass and do a map. If you get stuck out in the middle of someplace, guess what the first thing the enemy's going to do? You're going to be jammed, get an EMP, you're going to get knocked out, you're not going to have electrons, your GPS is going to go belly up at that point in time. You can't read a map, you don't know which you know, side of the world the sun sets or rises. If you don't information provided to us by all the folks involved, people, quite frankly, who are smarter than myself, that kind of thing. I do not consider myself that smart. I think general counsel is probably smarter than I am, that kind of thing. But facilitating concepts, Eisenhower, read the Eisenhower book, understand how to build teams, that sort of thing. That's harder than it is. It's easier to be autocratic and lean on your rank. It's so much easier to be autocratic and lean on your rank. You don't have to listen to anybody, and you're right all the time. Filter the information in. As a judge, what do? I'm filtering the information in all the time from both sides. They're wrong, of course, but I'm filtering it in each side all the time and trying to make that decision. Recruit, retain, prepare, develop, and support your family, your staff, your people. In the JAG, the weapon system is people. Along your 9mm, I still like the Beretta, by the way. Your M4, I do like the 6.8mm a lot more, quite frankly, and I own one or two. And you're the weapon system. You need to grow the people underneath you. You need to recruit people in from the law schools or people that you know. You need to make sure they're happy at their battle assembly, their drills. You need to make sure that they're growing within the system, that they get the opportunities. Give them the awards. Oh my gosh, you should be, as a leader, developing your plan to get awards for people. If you sit back and go, well, I didn't get an award, so I'm not going to give anybody else an award. I've seen that. That's wrong. You're not much of a leader at that point in time. You need to make sure that people are happy within the system, and you've got to do that balance DJ was talking about, especially within the family and how we do things, and we've got to cut people a little slack. If somebody's a persistent problem and they're doing too much in the sense of, oh, they're always missing drill, or they're doing this or that, but you got to give people some slack, and you got to make sure that the families are supporting them, and so that means you got to support them in the right way. Okay, non-toxic leadership, I already talked about that, and negative leadership. Okay, opportunity for affiliations. You probably can't read this stuff anyway, but if you really are interested in affiliations, this is just really for demonstration purposes. There are already official combat unit and combat unit affiliations out there. These are great affiliation areas, opportunities for brigade legal staff to go affiliate with the other. So if you're an active component, and you've got a National Guard unit that you affiliate with, get those BCT legal teams together so they have to talk and work together now before it's too late. It's harder to get together in theater than it is doing it now and starting to understand people. Plus everybody starts rotating through everything. So these are just the line forces, unit affiliations. You can look at the list. I think it's still accurate, but it's hard to actually pull this information up, by the way. These are unit affiliations that are out there. Okay, joint force. Here's a little bit of information on the Guard. So the Army is 330,000, almost 331,000, and the Air Force 107,000. Why do I say that? The National Guard is joint. Joint. We have planes that go blow things up because we're a joint force. We're part of the Department of Defense. We're not technically part of the Army or the Air Force. So that's our basic size. So of 987,000, we're 330, about 33%. So we're a chunk of the overall force. Now, National Guard jets, 901 of the force. I think I have an asterisk here. Of the 901, there's over 100 that are trial defense service, that kind of thing. So that drops it down to 800 that are doing the rest of the core missions that we've got. Okay, here's our quick summary on the National Guard. Okay, this is an artist's depiction of my first drill. The helmets have gotten a little bit better to use the padding. That's about it. Okay, the National Guard is a joint force. So when you see me in green, I'm really part of the Department of Defense. But I follow all the Army regulations, things like that. So that my counterpart was up here, Dan Bunch, a 2-star, actually out of Oregon too. He's part of the Department of Defense too. And he follows Air Force instructions, that sort of thing. So we're a joint force within the system. Now, National Guard Bureau, now, I'm in the National Guard Bureau now. I'm an Oregon National Guardist. And I'm now Title 10, because I'm part of the National Guard Bureau. So I'm federal today. When I am previous to my job, I was in Title 32 state, but I am Title 10. National Guard Bureau is Title 10. National Guard Bureau is not a command and control function over all the states. The states are like cats. You ever tried to herd cats? Doesn't work so well. So basically, National Guard Bureau is communication and funding, fiscal stuff for all the states. When I say states, I mean the 54. You got the 50 states, territories, and Washington, D.C. So that's the 54. So if you hear about the 54, what's that? States, territories, and D.C. So National Guard Bureau is fiscal, money down to the states, and then coordination control for DOD. Basically, it's a facilitator. And when you're herding cats, you're just trying to get everybody to get going in the right direction. Okay, state mission. Okay, so at the state level, in charge of the state is the governor. And that's kind of a change at that point in time. So when I'm in state status, Title 32, governor's in charge, goes down to the adjutant general. And they are then the facilitators to make sure that the state is operational. within the state, and I'll show you here in a second. Of course, you have your combat mission at that point in time. Our state mission includes floods, fires, that sort of thing. In Oregon, we're always worrying about the tsunami. These days, most of my coastline in Oregon is going to go washing away at that point in time. A little bit like California burning away, and the fires that we've had in Oregon the last few years. Most of the time when we do domestic operations, state status type stuff, we're in state active duty as a presumptive amount of active status, sometimes Title 32, it all depends. The state mission is subject to state law. I'll try to get to that a little bit later on. Everybody likes pictures. So this is a picture. This is Oregon and Montana, in a domestic operations exercise. These are some of the things the Guard does. We're in the exercises. We're preparing for the next mission. Anybody here from Florida? How do you like those hurricanes? Great prep for the National Guard. They just brush off the shoulders and we're done with another one. Just hurricanes constantly. Okay, duty status. Okay, here's a little, there'll be a test afterwards. So, once again, the National Guard is a joint activity of the Department of Defense, and National Guard, when you hear about the National Guard of the United States, this is very confusing, because if you look at the leading portion of a regulation, and you see something in a regulation that says, this regulation is applicable to the National Guard of the United States, that means the Title 10 elements of the National Guard. Doesn't mean all of the state guards are in Title 32. If you look at the applicability element in the paragraph, and it says it's applicable to the National Guard of the United States and the National Guard. Then once you get that National Guard without the National Guard of the United States, then you have something that may be applicable to Title 32, depending.
We know that different ways. He's in South Africa visiting a family member. Long time planned trip, so he had to go to South Africa. I asked him if I could go for him, if he could come here. He did not accept. I am here. He is an Atlanta Falcons fan. Whoa! And I am a Dallas Cowboys fan. Whoa! Some of us like whatever team General Fleur likes to. So, I'm here to give General Manville's update on legal commands. As we're here, we're going to walk through several different things. We'll be toe tapping and foot stumping some of the things that DJ just talked about as part of total force readiness. So you are all clear that we're all the same team and we're all doing the same thing, moving the same direction. All right. Those of you in the overflow room, please participate in this next exercise. So if you are a reserve component asset, raise your hand. All right, hands down. Active component assets. Cool. National Guard. All right. So in the overflow room, we should have seen hands go up at all 3 times. We saw that happen here. We're all working in the for the same purpose in the same direction, and that's part of the future force. So let's make sure that we're all thinking about that as we're here, because today we're operating in training mode here in Tennessee. Next week, we might be operating in operational mode at your post camper station, and in 18 months, 3 years, 6 years, we may be operating together in theater or at an active component installation in the close night fight. So what you want to do while you're here is alleviate the introduction in 18 months. Okay? I know General Hill. If I'm working alongside General Hill in 18 months, that's not the day that I want to say, hi General Hill, how are you? I'm Colonel Ron Sullivan. I'm from Legal Command. That's where we want to do that here down in Mountain. So take the opportunity, let's make sure we get that right. How many girls are supposed to have this on? Here's our legal command team. General Manville, myself, Colonel Ron II, DCO West, where you standing up from? Cool. So those of you out west of the Mississippi mostly, Colonel Sutton's your DCO, and those of you who are on the other side of the Mississippi out east, mostly, fall under my area of the community. We have the CXO, Mr. Glenn Umberger, will you stand there, Glenn? You'll notice that Mr. Umberger retired recently. And he joined. And I'm trying to get him to take a new picture, but he won't. CCWO, CW for technical office. And of course, the one and only, Master Major Marcus Montoya. We also have some other legal command assets who will be coming up in this brief to identify themselves. So while you're here, if you work in one of the functional areas, so if you're an S4 and our G4 is here, if you work budget at your LOD, she's going to kill me. So if you guys protect me after I say this, please. She's laughing. If you have a budget issue and you're not the LOD commander, so if you're someone else who supports your LOD commander with your LOD budget, please see Miss Katrina Moore, who also recently retired. She's the SOX and she works with our G357I. But she can help unscrew a lot of. As opposed to waiting for the mobilization list to find someone, 5 or 6 people to raise their hand. That's what partnerships are going to do. But this LOD task organization is what helps do that. These are the capabilities inside the LODF. All right. There are LOTGs. The team chiefs of an LOD general is a major. You can see how it's made up and you see what they work with. Specialty teams are led by lieutenant colonels. There's various specialties. Every specialty area that we work on as a JIG advocate, many of the LODs have them. Yes, there are 4. Different LOD commanders do it differently. Maybe the entire LOD is focused on one specialty. So they have many plug-and-play experts in that area, so they can train people up. The LOD commander may say, our teams, we have 2 specialties across 4 teams, and it runs across the 56 personnel in our unit. Some LOD commanders say we're going to be not all things to everyone, but we're going to be 4 things to everyone. That's an LOD commander issue, but there are some geographic issues. For instance, out in California with the 75th and the 78th, as well as up in the 6th, there are some environmental issues that happen. They have DISCA issues that happen in those areas all the time. So you'll see that if you engage those commanders, they have DISCA assets a little more than others. But there's some complex litigation teams on different LODs. There are national security law teams. There are DISCA non-trained personnel. But our goal is to make sure that we have reservists who are trained up in different areas. And when an issue comes in to the CG, he can pick up the phone. He usually then calls Colonel Sutton or I and say, hey, we have this request from XYZ unit in your area. Who's got the specialty team for that in your area? And we then reach out and find them. And we just connect. All right, let's talk about training for a minute. I was going to hold it to the end because it's in the wrap-up slide. But training for a TPU is not like training on a baseball team, right? It's not like training on the basketball team, just going to the reserve center and training. When you take orders, AT orders, and you go to an active installation and you actually do the work that you've been trained to do, you're still training, but you're training hands-on, okay? So you want your mechanic to actually know how to turn the wrench before they touch your car, not just train back in the training center. So that's what's happening when reservists go to an active component selection. So when we say readiness isn't just staying in the reserve center. Readiness isn't saying, hey, I'd like to take 2 weeks of my AT to stay back at the LOD and help out the AGRs do some things in the category. That's not making you a better paralegal. That's not making you a better judge advocate or legal administrator, unless you're actually working in your function. So that makes sense if you're doing LOD work in support of an RC unit in your same building as the recorder, or working ad law issues. That makes sense. But if you want to validate that you actually know how to do it, go out to NTC and grab an ad law packet. I guarantee you the SJ out at NTC would be happy to have you assisting their ad law chief, turning over some packets, especially while someone's out on maternity leave, convalescent leave, someone's deployed and they're down a hand. If you're an expert in rule of law, national security issues, anything like that, any active component post across this country, I don't even have to pick the phone and call them right now. Every SJ would be happy to have you there as an additional eye, an additional brain, an additional asset to turn over packets. And it's okay to make mistakes, because we all make them, especially if you have a chief in that office who can look at your information and say, hey, yeah, that's how we used to do that. But here, let me take 2 steps out for you. Let me show you how we do that now. All right, here are the priorities in training. Priorities in training, the priorities are still the same: readiness. And with the readiness, let's talk about a couple of things that are we have RFX units, and those are focus force units. We'll talk about them specifically about 6 or 7 slides down the road. But they're training for their mission. Whatever their assigned mission is, they're training for it. And I can tell you now, 14 days of AT and 48 units just isn't enough. So we have mechanisms to fix that. And RFX units get a little bit more time to do some training. The idea is that they don't show up connected to their ready force assigned unit, and they're learning what their mission or task is, or becoming familiar with it, or just now getting their malaria shot. All right? The idea is during your time training as an LOD soldier, you're actually preparing to do what your mission is. Next, let's talk about developing and growing future leaders. Our job, as DJ talked about with building the bench, who's going to be the next LOD commander? Who's going to be the next LOD deputy? Who's going to be that major team chief? How do we find that person? Well, we do it in the training that happens at our LODs. LOD commanders, team chiefs, chief paralegals. You're supposed to be taking your eyeballs, looking at your personnel, observing that they are growing and developing. And your job then is to help identify and develop that person. Now, that doesn't mean that you ignore the person who's not developing in a manner that's impressive to you. What that means is that you actually take your hand, you grab them by the arm, and say, hey, let me help you a little bit. Let's walk you down this path here. This is helping to develop. Now let's take you down here and do something else. Now, you've just helped develop a soldier who wasn't developing. And you get to do that at your battle center. You get to do that by programming the annual training that they do. We have a Best Warrior competition coming up next week. That's training. It's validated training, but it's also training. And it should also be training throughout the year. It shouldn't just simply be, hey, we have Best Warrior competition coming up in 3 weeks. CSM's asked for packets. Hey, let's go outside and see who can. No, that's not training. That's not training. All right. No one wants their kids to be preparing for the history test just to take the history test. We want their kids to be training for the history test to be able to, in 3, 4, 5 years, understand history so they don't repeat it. So let's not just train up our NCOs to show up for the best warrior competition 3 weeks before. Same as all the other training that we have. It's not training for the sake of training. We provide support, when we say embed units, we're also providing support to the geographic and functional commands across the country. So that's where, it's not just simply on AC posts, sometimes it's with an RC partner who is actually in the process of doing AT themselves. They might need a lawyer, they might be short lawyers. It's our job. We actually have the Dual Command FX coming up, and we have other reserve component assets that are coming in to assist us in various areas, whether it be signal or medical. So we're actually doing the reverse for some of those other geographic and functional commands as they're doing their mission. Cool. This is a milestones chart. It's an eye chart. What's the point of the chart? Those are the major functions that we have going on in the legal command. And you can see where we are now. We're at the Midwest Great Lakes on-site, 24 March 19. All right? We're waiting for an official announcement, but shortly we'll have the chain of command for legal command. Once we have that, we'll then move into legal command FX. Once we get to legal command FX, we have the Northeast on-site. We have several war X's that we're participating in. Every LOD commander in this room has probably made some of the TPU soldiers nauseous by the words ready. Veterans. Be ready. Who's red? Get green. Cool? All right. But let me tell you why it's important. It's important because you can't just show up, get your PHA, and get to the mobilization platform when you have to wait for LHI to call you back for an appointment and you have to be at the mobilization platform in 3 days. It's too late. You can't get your DD-93 completed and in your system, in the file, especially if you do it live firm. It takes 6 weeks to get there. What happens if you die in 3 weeks and you still have your ex-spouse on your DD-93? They're happy to take the check and deposit it and look at your family impact. Unfortunately. You can't do your SGLV in less than 24 hours. And I imagine you want to pack and hug someone and talk to your kids, talk to your employer. You might want to do something else with that time. That's valuable time. But more importantly, you've been told to do it. All right, so let me put stuff down. You've been told to do it. If you haven't done it, you're wrong. If you can't track your own individual readiness metrics, you're wrong. It shouldn't take an 06 LOD commander or an E8 or an E7 chief paralegal or senior paralegal to tell you, especially if you're a major, lieutenant colonel, sergeant first class, because we have specialists and sergeants, E5, who can get that done and then show up to battle symbol ready to work. The MR2 is what I'm pointing to. The MR2 is the measure of our readiness and several other issues, several other items. Is the legal command ready? Are the soldiers ready? Is the unit ready? Is it LOD ready? Every LOD commander is focused on it. And I'm spending time on it now with the update because I have a captive audience. So that ties directly to readiness. Your commanding general would like you to be ready. Your TJAG would like you to be ready. The Chief of Staff of the Army would like you to be ready to set Army. And everyone at home whose freedom and liberty depends on it would like you to be ready. So since it's your job, let's do it. Support to the total force. This is a bar graph that shows how many deployments and mobilizations we've had the past several years. We're expected to match that again this year. We can't imagine if we don't have several volunteers who are ready to do it. I can tell you, TJAG has asked our director of legal command that when we send up suggestions of names and nominations, that we send up 2 to 3, 4 names. Understand how this works. We're sending up 2 to 3 or 4 names. There's some names coming from the embed units, there's some names coming from the National Guard. That's great. That means TJ gets multiple names for an assignment. We'll go backwards for a second. That's why it says we have about 1,800 billets. I just told you we have about 1,600 on the books. About 800 are focused. The other 800 can actually provide the names of the volunteers. Everyone raised their hand a few minutes ago, so we know hands work, to fill in the mobilization requests that come in. This is where we're currently mobilized and deployed. This slide, you also saw it on the TJAG slide, it talks about where our ODTs are, where our support to our COCOMs are. We have not had hills missions this year, this FY, but we'll have some. And if you have a foreign language specialty, you should be letting your LOD commander know, especially if with your foreign language specialty, you also have a skill that you're highly specialized in, an expert. Because we can marry that up with the DILS books, and you can find yourself in the Congo actually teaching a rule of law class. You can find yourself in South America teaching a rule of law or some other course, providing some other things to our partners around the world. Places where we're partnering. Legal command seems to be in multiple places. And that's because we actually are. We have multiple missions. So in a few minutes you're going to hear Major Angelia Shamfu. She's the outgoing SBC Deputy Program Manager. She's an AGR. She's done a great job with the mission of SBC. She's taken the baton, she's run with it, and she's stretching it out for her replacement. But we have SBC Council and SBC Paralegal who are doing a major mission, major job. We also have, in the room right now is Kim Huda. She was the former commander of the 12th LOD, and Dave Hodgkinson is not at this point, but he's the current commander. The 12th LOD is a hard-fix unit who was in the Pacific Surge training last summer. And they pulled off an amazing feat. Took an entire LOD to sit in the seats of our PACOM partners over about a 6-week period. But it wasn't just show up and go do that. It was get SIPR tokens for everyone, get everyone their immunization, get everyone the computer training that's required, not just for NetCom here in the US, not just PACOM NetCom requirements, but also Korea NetCom requirements. So if you guys get sick of doing cyber awareness training annually, imagine doing that 3 different times, 3 different ways, and all the other requirement training. Okay. As well as get their security clearances validated and make sure everyone was ready to go. Not only did the 12 LOD show up and fall in the seats, but they showed up, they fell in the seats, they did the missions. They left seated and right seated with the next team that came in from their unit for 1 day. And then did their mission for 21 days, left seat, right seated with their next contingent. And we validated that we can follow them as our RFX mission with an LOD. Right? We don't know what the task will be for our RFX mission. But we do know that when they come, we're capable of getting ourselves ready. We're capable of getting there. And the 12th LOD is one of our LODs that includes it. One of the crown jewels of the legal command is the fact that we have a joint SOP with AI Norm. to provide district trained attorneys to the 13 FEMA region defense coordinating office. Now, when you all were watching the news that there were hurricanes last hurricane season, and there was a typhoon last typhoon season, last summer, well, there's 5 on this slide, but there were probably a total of 11 reservists who were moving into the fight, just like firemen, into the fire, running in, they wanted to go home and capture the task and job. Those calls came, and in less than 24 to 48 hours, we had reservists move into the rear cells to provide their distance support, and we even had some deploying directly to the place where the disaster was occurring. All right, 174th LOD had some folks showing up in Puerto Rico in the mission, down with Adi Maramba and his team at the 1st MSC. So understand that's what readiness is. We can't send a non-ready DISCA attorney to show up and then they have a problem. It's our job to be ready in advance. All right, sustaining and enhancing. So I talked about RFX teams, RFX units. So we have these RFX units, and they're focus force readiness units. Focus force units, we have the 12th, 75th, and 174th. They're focused and assigned to particular units on the TIF bid, to do a mission. If that unit is tasked to move out, those 3 units are moving out with those units. We have 4 RFX 3 units. Now they're working the mobilization platform. But how long does it take to get what's your call time for an MFGI unit? 2 weeks to get there? To be there and operational in 2 weeks. All right? So we have the ready force unit that's going to get up, move to where the unit they're assigned to, ready, and start working. We have units that will be moving out of the door, and the MFGI unit, the RFX3 unit, in 2 weeks have to be at their platform, whether it's Fort Knox, Fort McCoy, Fort Bliss, JBLM, or Fort Gordon, or Fort Stewart, Georgia. Those units have to be in place to send all the units that are going out of the door. That means SRPing them, getting them ready, and actually this month, several of those MFGIs are hot right now, validating that they can do their mission. RFX 4 units, the 151st, the 153rd, and 150th. We're also negotiating right now which will be the next RFX 4 unit to be designated, pushed into this fight. All right? Those units, they have no idea where their mission will be. But it does mean that they have to be ready when they're tagging up. One thing I want to point out, I'm talking about mobilizing and deploying. Just because you're an RFX unit doesn't mean you can't mobilize and deploy. What it means is, before you go call Colonel Summers and Major Worthington, Captain Jordan, you need to talk to your LOD commander. Hey, LOD commander, I'd like to go to X place. Is that okay? Oh, well, that would be good training for you. Well, let's see who else is in our unit. Once they do that analysis, they call up and talk to the DCO and the CG. And you just get an approval to go on that deployment or that mobilization. All right? That's why you're there. But we don't want you just sitting there training just for the sake of training to be ready. If there's an opportunity to get you to more training and validate what you can do, that's your opportunity. So you can still raise your hand. It just takes a little more coordination. The idea is we don't want an RFX 1 unit or an RFX 3 unit or 4 unit to mobilize half of their folks out of their unit, and then they can't do their RFX task. That makes sense. I'll be back to wrap up in a few minutes, so if our LOD commanders, the storyboards, if they would just come to the side table there, side stairs are really great. So legal commands here to make sure that when the coach looks down the bench and they need another point guard, they need another forward, they need another center, that we're here ready. That we're not just learning how to play point guard, we're not learning what the plays are after they send you to the table to check in, all right? Our job is to start training now, be ready, and get things done. We bring to the fight so many different capabilities, and what's even better about capabilities, when you talk about the LOD specialties, when you talk about the things that an LOD is capable of and the capabilities inside, we're just talking about some of the military functions and capabilities. We're not even talking about a career prosecutor with 60 murder cases under their belt going in and finding themselves doing military justice under the new Military Justice Act. So they may not be 100% right now on the Military Justice Act, but if I put them right next to someone who's 100% on it, and I take their 70% on the Military Justice Act with their 60 murder trials, we just put together a legal team. Right? Someone who does mergers and acquisitions, you understand how to read contracts, we put you in the group of contracts, which you're developing contracts expertise. That's what we're bringing to the fight. Our goal is to help you even develop further your military law expertise. Same for our paralegals, same for our warrant officers. Warrant officers, every one of you can't be knowledge management experts. We want you to be broadly skilled in that. We want you to work budget. We want you to understand how the network works. We want you to be the jack of all trades, broadly skilled. But we do want you to have those specialties, because there are places that we need to place you to do that function. Same thing with paralegals. Cool. The last bullet there talks about how we support and how that equals training and how that equals readiness. I'm not going to read it for you since I talked about it a little bit earlier. But what I do want to do is make sure that you're thinking about that. Everything you're doing as a reservist to make you better is training. Every time you show up at a place to do your job, that's training. And as you train, we want you to get stronger, just like being in the gym. Right, so next up is the second LOD. Can I get a mic for
So do you want to take a question first, or you want to go straight through the storyboard? It's up to you.
let me go to storyboards and other questions.
Okay, as you haven't heard enough of me already today, second LOD, so in the quad chart, RCRC integration, we actually recently provided paralegal support to the 377 TSC, which is kind of cool located near us in New Orleans, Louisiana. The enlisted soldier that I sent did such a great job that they're now asking for him to come on an ADOS tour because they need a lot of support on boards. I don't know what the other LOD commanders take, and I heard Colonel Sullivan said, but if you work for me and you want to over deploy, you go. I take it short on this side of the house so that we can go get that training, education, and experience. Sorry about that, I haven't seen this slide forever, I thought you were good. We do SRP missions regularly, obviously, with our fellow RC units, and we have several actually trained SBCs now at this point. I think it started up at the time, so we keep trying to rotate different officers through. Major Stone being one of the newest ones, he's already gotten a client immediately after his training was complete. We have a lot of people, I'll just kind of move across actually, a lot of people who have done ODT missions or deployments. 4 of them actually did a November 20-day tour in Germany. I have 2 more. We were assigned a new ODT mission that wasn't part of our initial training schedule. 2 people in Guatemala coming up in May. So we sent an officer and a high-speed senior NCO, actually, I hope, to take a brand new lieutenant who's going to get down there and try new things, learn new stuff, and be trained by the NCO Corps to do what we need her to do. How long do I have? 5 seconds? I'm done?
I can name that tune in about 45 seconds. So I'm going to focus in on ACRC integration, because that's where it's at. Blakestone, Commander 8th LOD, sir, good to see you again. Historically, legal command has produced what I would call the world's greatest legal assistance attorneys. But the expectation of deployed commanders and deployed SJs is that all of our folks are competent across all the court practice areas. The only way we're going to get there is through ACRC integration. I'm fortunate in our footprint, we've got Leavenworth, Leonard Wood, Fort Riley. We are plugged in and we have teams at Leavenworth and Leonard Wood. Fort Riley is in our footprint, but somehow historically the 214 LOD has been sort of their go-to. We're trying to change that. Just by, I guess, ad hocery or happenstance, Colonel Jeff Thurner now of 18th Airborne Corps gave us a call. They needed some help, so we have some folks going over there. And also 1st Army, which is headquartered technically outside of our footprint, but close enough. Up at Rock Island Arsenal, we have one of our lieutenant colonels that's going there to do some AT. But the only way we're going to get to where we need to be in terms of competency in military justice, ad law, and the other practice areas outside of legal assistance is by plugging folks in every opportunity we get with Compo 1 OSJs. And I will be followed by, I don't know which number. 9th LOD.
Good morning, I'm Glenn Schmidt. I'm privileged to be the commander of the 9th LOD. We have 50 soldiers in my unit. About 30 of them are here this weekend because we have 12 soldiers who are on AT at Fort Dix. As Colonel Sullivan mentioned, we are a ready force unit, but we still have our peacetime mission, and so I'll start in the upper left-hand corner, our RC to RC support. Every month, we have clients come into one of our 3 locations. My unit is headquartered in Ohio, but we have troops in Inkster, Michigan, which is outside Grand Rapids, and Sharonville, Ohio, which is outside Cincinnati. We provide services to commanders and soldiers in Ohio, Michigan, and parts of Indiana. So every month we have soldiers come in for legal assistance. We also have an SRP, usually 1 or 2 a month, that our folks cover down on. That's our peacetime mission, and it continues even though we are a ready force unit. We have lasting ACRC relationships with Fort Knox and Fort Campbell. Our SJs are here. We have really good relationships with them, and they're great to get our people in to do work for them when they have that need. But for the last year and a half, our focus has been on the ready force concept. We, as Colonel Sullivan mentioned, we provide legal services at 3 MFGI platforms. Mission Mobilization Force Generation Installation is what an MFGI is. Ours are Dix, Knox, and McCoy. The concept is our people will roll in and run the SRP, provide legal services for the several thousand troops who come through those platforms on their way to a battlefield someplace. And we're also working to add to that legal assistance mission, law of war, code of conduct as part of the training. And then you can also see we have some folks who are deployed. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, everybody. Dave Chiley, brand new commander of the 91st. So I'm briefing the prior slide. We have a great RC integration piece. We work with USC on lots of boards that we provide stand-down cover for them. Captain has been greatly involved with them, as well as we're going on with the 290 Deputy Brigade in June sometime. Spend a whole week with them and try to help them out. ACRC integration, we've had some people that are deployed some APT side. We're trying to reach out. Obviously, we have First Army up. I work from Chicago, Iowa, as well as Indiana. So not many active duty installations by us. We're going to kind of reach out. Actually, call John Kent, a buddy of mine from Income, try and get a 91st hooked up with them to try to do more ACRC integration. Upcoming events, obviously we're here this weekend, as well as the FTX coming up. Thanks.
Hey, good morning. Steve Haskell, good morning. But the 60 seconds or less, where you use zero briefing is free, right? Got it. Real quick, we're one of the units that we have 2 hot missions going on in RFX3. Colonel Sutton and I were just at Fort Bliss on Tuesday to visit the soldiers there. They're doing great things, great opportunities in addition to you doing the SRP type briefings, etc. You're also getting an opportunity to follow on with the SJA. Ditto for Fort Hood, I was there last week. The soldiers there are getting an opportunity, and I see the Sergeant Major right there, getting an opportunity with Report to have that opportunity. My point is, you're in my recruiting pitch to you if you're out there, and you're looking to go to somewhere where the action is 128 has an RFX 3 mission as the other. It's good duty, it's great training, and I think it looks good on an OER or an NCOER.
Thank you, Ron. I'm from the 139th LOD, and we do a great mix of reserve component support as well as active component integration. As a matter of fact, Colonel Colise, she's the SJA for the 101st. She's going to be speaking to us, I believe, a little later this week. So she'll be able to fact check anything I say right now. But I think she will agree with me that the integration between our teams and the SJA's office at the 101st has been exceptionally good. And I hope that she'll be able to explain that a little more fully later this week. But our two teams that are co-located with her office at Fort Campbell do a great mix of admin law, legal support in terms of legal assistance, client services and such. And even on the military justice side, one of our majors was able to be lead counsel on a court-martial earlier this year, and we're really proud of him for accomplishing that. But it's really something that I stepped into. My predecessors did a great job of building that relationship, and it's going really well. As a matter of fact, one of the ways that we've been able to accomplish that is one of our team leaders is a civilian employee in the JAG office, and he is able to build up a caseload during the week so that when our teams come in on the weekend, there's a ready set of missions for them, real-world missions for them to accomplish when they get there. So that's been very effective. Our Millington team does some work with the Navy, the Naval Station down in Millington, Tennessee. That has been very effective. And of course, we do our full mix of SRPs and yellow ribbons and that sort of thing too on the reserve side. So overall, it's been a great mix. I've got great people doing it.
The staff is going to start coming up to the stairs there while we listen to the 174th commander. He doesn't have a slide here today, not his fault, but okay.
Good morning, Kevin Barnes, the commander of the 174th for another 16 days or so until about June, maybe a little longer than that. We are geographically spread out. We've got Miami, Florida, St. Petersburg, Orlando, and Puerto Rico. That puts us in the unique opportunity to be able to service CENTCOM, SOCOM, SOUTHCOM, 1MSC, AR-MEDCOM. It allows us to be able to tap into those ACRC partnerships and relationships and be able to get our folks involved in a lot of high-speed activities. For example, Panamax is a big activity for those who are familiar with SOUTHCOM. And SOUTHCOM puts on Panamax every year. We will send folks out. Last year we sent one of our team leaders out. They loved the work that she provided. They asked if she would be willing to come back again this year. So we're able to maintain those kind of relationships with SOUTHCOM. We're able to do the same thing with 1MSC. They had the hurricane situation and there was a lot of high visibility coordination between General Schultz and General Glanville. That paved the way for the relationship between the 174th, 1MSC to be able to take care of the soldiers that were on the ground during some pretty austere conditions. That's very important.
So we don't have a full staff here today, but what we do have is different staff sections that your folks, if you're here and you work with them, please don't be shy. Ask them whatever you need before they're in the hallway.
Good morning. So First Class Harps, G1, and also your shark coordinator. Just one note, please keep two of our battle buddies in their prayers. Sergeant First Class White and also Colonel Folk, they have lost family members. So keep me in your thoughts and prayers.
Good morning, I'm Katrina Moore. As Colonel Sullivan has already put out, I'm Ms. Fox. I manage the LOD budgets. If you have any questions, please come see me. I am also your command security manager. If you have issues with your security clearances, please come see me. But please make sure you bring your LOD security manager with you. Thank you.
Good morning, Sergeant Major Steve Minyard, G357 Sergeant Major for the Legal Command. I have my hands in a little bit of everything, planning, training, and operations-wise. So we're about to get ready for this FX that starts in about a month. So if you have any questions about the functional exercise, it's a very different animal than what we've done before. I know we have 3 of our support LODs here. Please grab me. I'll be between here and the enlisted office where the enlisted are going to be training. So there's no such thing as a stupid question with this FX. Stay on top of the ACFT implementation as well. Kind of getting all the good information. We have an information dump we'll put out this coming week that we got from USARC on what USARC plans on giving us to actually get after that. So cool. I'll be followed by the G37.
Thanks, Sergeant Major. Good morning, everyone. Sergeant First Class Rich Barnett, part of a 2-person, heavily involved G37 in your legal command. My counterpart, Master Sergeant Barker, is at JDLM this week, prepping the battlefield for Best Warrior. Come see me, enlisted folks. Let's talk PME. Majors, let's talk ILE, please. I know we have a few incoming LOD commanders. We need to talk pre-command for that as well. Anything ATARS related, schools, come chat with me. I'll probably be across the hall in the other building. So come me down and let's chat, please.
Good morning, I'm Major Darla Zaised, and I am the Deputy IG for the command. We are here to help. I have Master Sergeant Allen in the other room. Master Sergeant Allen, if you don't mind raising your hand so folks know who you are. We are here to help with any issues. If you've identified trends in your units that you require teaching and training or other assistance cases, we're here to help with that. So please come see me. I'll be available, and Master Sergeant Allen is also available, although he didn't know that.
Good morning, my name is Lieutenant Lee. I'm the new G3 MOBOPS officer. As the command emphasized, we have a lot of opportunities available for you, both OCONUS and CONUS. We also have 12302 TCS per diem based mobilizations. It's a great opportunity for you to serve at the division and corps level with our AC counterparts. Please come see me. Thank you very much.
Major Angelia Shampoon, the USAR SBC Deputy Program Manager. As Colonel Sullivan mentioned, I'm on my way out. In fact, I realized that this is my last on-site as the program manager, so I'm really sad to go, but I wanted to say thank you to all the SBC, because I know that you've worked very hard. I also wanted to say thank you to all the commanders for all your support. I know it's a difficult tasking sometimes, but you guys have all risen to the occasion. For the reserve course, July 21st to the 26th is the next SBC certification course. The child course is actually right after that, from the 29th of July to the 31st. And on a last note, all my SBC paralegals and attorneys, please meet me out by the CLE table at the lunch break. So at 12:15, all right?
Let's give it up for staff. I understand there are some questions. What's the name here in the middle? Okay, no questions?
Does anyone in here have questions? There's one question, sir, from the other room.
Got a question in the back.
Got a question in the back.
Okay, hold on one second.
No, Shane Cater can't ask questions.
Morning, sir. Hey, just quick, is there any plan to alternate the LODs that are currently in the RFX units, sir?
The question is there a plan to rotate units in and out of the RFX? So the RFX designations are coming from FORSCOM, and they come to the car. Their unit is designated. We don't have a a date like we did with SRM or Arcogen that this LOD rotates in or out. But what we're doing to take some of the relief off is we are allowing some movement between in and out of our FX units in the meantime. It's just not a high turnover because we're talking about trying to make sure the local residents. Next question here. Question on the text.
Are there any other questions from the room? Okay, sir, there's one question from the other room. This might be PPTO as well, I'm not really sure. It says, with regarding volunteering for MOB opportunities, can the leadership please explain why sanctuary is a showstopper for a qualified and motivated volunteer?
Have that person come see me.
Cool, sir.
Okay, there's no point in doing it right here, but have the person come see me. We'll talk with Colonel Summers and we'll try to answer.
Okay, any other questions? All right, thank you, sir.
Okay. Last comments before I get off the stage is keep training. Be ready. Victory with justice.
Thank you so much for your support. I didn't know you were bringing the entire staff, so we'll supplement it for you. And the second still can't join the East, I'm sorry. The on-site to welcome our Deputy Judge Advocate General of the United States Army, General Rich. I am not going to bore any of you with reading his bio. He specifically asked that. Plus, I figure you're all grown. You can see what it says there. The mistake he made, though, was inviting me to dinner with a group of people last night. So, instead of what's in the bio, you get what you learn when you go to dinner with the VJAC. And I will attempt to keep it. Actually, sir, I appreciate some of your stories, and I'm just going to incorporate one brief piece of it. For those of you who don't know, I'm sure he will tell you that he is as surprised as any of us to be standing here in front of you, particularly as a two-star general. Let's just say he wasn't necessarily enamored to be an OBC. It wasn't necessarily in his cards to be an OBC. And he probably tried everything possible to get out of being an OBC. I will tell you my personal story related to that is when I showed up to OBC, you may not remember, but D-Jag was actually on the faculty at the JAG school, and he was the editor of the Law Review. After having him look at some of my work while at OBC, I probably shouldn't have been at OBC either. So I too am very thankful to be here this many years later. But I will say this, all you have to do is to look at his bio and spend even 5 minutes with him, and you will know that it is our distinct honor and pleasure to have him as the Deputy Judge Advocate General because of what he does for the people who work for him, to include all of us. I know that I certainly, back then, you wouldn't know it, sir, but I learned a lot from all those red marks that were put across the pieces of paper that had to go across this desk. And I continue, sir, to learn a lot through you and, of course, General Petey in your demonstration of leadership to all of us, but in particular, in the care that you take for the people that work for you. The Deputy Judge.
Okay, good morning. So I'll just change a couple of the admin announcements. If you need to stand up while there's a guest speaker, especially while I'm talking, I want you to stand up, shout out your name, rank, TODI number, and then exit the auditorium. That way I'm certain that no one will leave while I'm speaking. I understand if you gotta go, you gotta go. The second thing I thought was, so my staff put together, not slides, but actually like a 25-page speech. So I thought I would just stand here at the podium and read that to you. Is that okay? No, we will not do that. We will talk about other things. So, a little rebuttal to Colonel Crawford's comments, or a little explanation, which I think is important. I like telling the story. My wife doesn't like telling it. I was ROTC, Ed DeLay, So I had a commitment, fully understood the commitment, coming in for 4 years, happy to do it. But I joined a reserve unit while I was going to law school in New Jersey. Camp Kilmer in Edison, New Jersey, not there anymore, but 78th Infantry Division, one station unit training. We trained drill sergeants that went to Dixon Benning and trained the basic trainings. I absolutely loved it. I went to law school during the week. I worked in a firm. And then, as you all know better than I do, on the weekends, and it was actually, 1 weekend a month, a couple weeks during the summer, a couple Thursday nights a month and so forth, but I loved doing that because it was different from everything else I was doing. And there was a glut of folks in our LTCs, so they were allowing lots of combat arms officers to come into our reserve unit who had the exact same commitment as me. So my law firm, who hired me at the end of my first year, said, why can't you do the same thing? Why can't you do 8 years of reserve duty? And I said, that's that good. I love what I'm doing. So unbeknownst to me, they started writing congressionals to all the senators and congressmen that they knew. So on the 5th one, I think, a 3-star wrote, and I got the note that said, he's coming in because I said he's coming in. And I got a call from J-Raps, which was the precursor to J-Row, one morning at 6:30 in the morning. I love telling stories because it's funny. I didn't wake up until 8 or 9. I was working in a civilian law firm actually for about a year and a half after I graduated because we were still trying to fight this battle. And the caller said, it was a major from J-Row, and she said, you'll get your application for the JAG Court branched by COB tomorrow, or you'll be branched tomorrow. And I spent the first half of the day saying, yeah, right, they can't do that. I spent the second half of the day saying, holy crap, what if they can? I'll be riding around on a Bradley in Mach 4 with my law degree saying, what in the heck did I do? So needless to say, I got my application in. 2 days later, the board must have been meeting, and I got called and said, hey, congratulations, you've been assessed. Your first duty station is Fort Hood, Texas. I didn't know until I got to the basic course that there was such a thing as a dream sheet, a preference sheet that you could fill out. Obviously, they didn't care what my preferences were. I was going to Fort Hood, Texas, and for a boy from New Jersey who'd never been west of the Mississippi, I had to get a map out not to see where Fort Hood was, but to see where Texas was. So needless to say, I came to the basic course coming from a law firm where I was dating the senior partner's niece. He had taken me under his wing. I was looking at him, and he was everything that I wanted to be. And they kept my name on the letterhead and said, as soon as you can get out of the Army, we'll take you back on. So my performance in the basic course was less than stellar, let's put it that way. In fact, I wouldn't even use the word stellar to be associated. I was in the Deputy Commandant's office at the position of grade rest after the first 2 exams, explaining why I had performed so poorly on those exams. So if you talk to anybody in my basic course, and they're all gone now, Norm Allen was the last one to retire, they're like, you're a general officer. Anyway, so as I did last night at dinner, I'm more than happy to regale you with more stories about my OBC. But all I'll say is I got to Fort Hood, Texas, and I know it sounds hokey, but 2 things. One, the people I worked with, and the work I did. I was in legal assistance, but every night I turned out the light and I felt good about myself, and I felt good about what I was doing. Because I was helping people that if I didn't help them, as we all know, weren't going to get the help anywhere else. And while it sounds, again, hokey, it made me realize why I became a lawyer in the first place. And I had lost sight of that working at my law firm. Not to say that everybody does work in civilian law, but I had gotten back on course and called my law firm and said, take my name off. And I'm here for almost 32 years later, here I am. So pretty cool story. So I loved it when I was in FSO because I could actually tell people that story. Like, look, I didn't want to come in. I had a firm hold at the door jam. They dragged me in, kicking and screaming. And here I am, and I love it. So, with that as a start, here's the team that we brought with us. Obviously, Terry Summers is going to have interviews with you. Please sign up if you have anything that you want to talk to PPNTO about. I'll talk some PPNTO issues. Terry will as well, too. But ask your questions. I mean, I know we speakers always say that. We want this to be interactive. But a lot of you have seen the slides that I'm going to brief. You want to brief them because it's got to be a steady drumbeat of what General Petey and I and the other leadership, the Command Sergeant Major and the CWOC and the Senior Civilian have put out. We'll hear from them as well, too. But I'd like you to press us on it. Ask us why we're doing it. ask us if we don't talk about it, what's the effect on the reserve component of what we're doing with new things. So Terry's here to talk about that. We've got Chief Prescott here on behalf of the Chief Warrant Officer of the Corps. We've got Command Sergeant Major Martinez on behalf of himself. So there it is. And Mr. Kuhn is here as well on behalf of Mr. Shea, our senior civilian. So I'd also encourage, during the breaks, social events and so forth, while you can, grab them and talk to them about issues. A lot of people have already done that in my hour here, have had an opportunity to come up. And just what's great about these and why I like coming, if I could, schedule-wise, come to every onsite, I would, because it's great to see people that I haven't seen for a long time. And just to rekindle those friendships, comradeships, and so forth. So I encourage you to do the same. Okay, so with that, you've seen this before. So I'm going to be quick on a lot of slides. We'll make sure you get the slides to be able to look at them later on, read them, ask questions, and so forth. But your single takeaway from this is we understand everybody is so focused on the daily night fight, especially you. And I'll come back to the theme of everything that I talk about. If I was talking to an active duty audience, I realize that I'd be saying you're focused on the daily night fight in your office, but we also want you to look to the future. That's what the Secretary of the Army is doing. That's what he wants the leadership of each of the branches, the leadership within the Army staff to do is, how are we going to look 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? And what are we doing now to prepare for it? If you're not starting that, we all know that. We can talk that. Easy to talk. I will tell you, it's very difficult to do. With budgets that fluctuate, with leadership, administration, with secretaries that change, both at the OSD and Army level and so forth, it's a little bit hard to do that. We owe you, as your leadership, to insulate you from all of that so that you can focus on those things and make recommendations to us. Next week, there'll be a Board of Directors meeting. Who knows what the Board of Directors is and what it does? Wow, that's kind of disheartening. Only those people in the front row that are going to come. So, you know we have a strategic initiatives process that we started, which is, what are those things that we need to change within the Corps? And that is reserve component as well as active duty. Hopefully you're aware of that. You understand what some of those initiatives are. We're going to talk about some of them today, and you should ask questions about it. But the boss and I didn't want to come in, even though we've spent the last 10 or 15 years preparing ourselves for this. Not that we knew we'd be in these roles, but we were in leadership roles as colonels and lieutenant colonels, and we certainly identified things like, if I had the opportunity, I'd look into changing that. We also knew that what we didn't want to do is come in and just change things around because we thought they should be changed around. For two reasons. One, the best ideas do not emanate from the Pentagon. I think we all know that. The best ideas emanate from you all, where the rubber meets the road, where you're living it every day, and you can say, you may think it's this way, but you really need to understand what it's like where we are. And that's why we come to these. This is called the State of the Corps. I could tell you what the State of the Corps is, but that would be my perception and the leadership's perception of the State of the Corps. We want to hear from you what you really think the State of our Corps is. So quite honestly, you could be up on the stage giving the leadership the briefing of the State of the Corps. But this is what we're doing here is understanding that you've got the daily night fight, and we can give you the resources and the guidance and the assistance to do that. But we also need you to, my analogy is pop up out of the box every once in a while and survey the battlefield. Look deep, see what's happening, like I said, a couple years out, and 2028 and beyond, and figure out what it is. Because a lot of you in the room are going to be the leadership that's going to have to take our Corps to and through that period. Our mission and vision, we tried to make it simple. We sat down, we wondered whether it would have to change, and it doesn't. And it didn't. It stayed the same from what Darpino and Ayers had to now. So mission, what we do each and every day. Vision, what we aspire to be. And it's pretty straightforward, and as you can see in there, what's highlighted in red are all the things that we talked about from General Darpino's time on through is dual profession, that we're both soldiers as well as lawyers, soldiers as well as paralegals, officers as well as lawyers, officers as well as paralegals. It's our commitment, it's our competence, and it's our character as well too. And we'll talk about that in the subsequent slide. So, who are we? The oldest, biggest, and the best ones. DOJ, anybody who works in here from DOJ might take this issue with that. There may be enough, but it depends on how you count. You think we're bigger, but. And some great photos of some heroes, to include an LED up there. I could put hundreds of slides with the things that you're sending in all the time about the great work that's being done across the board. Speaking of that, some photos that you all have sent in and the staff put up from there's any number of LODs plus folks from the legal command that are represented, all doing great work. Soldier skills as well as legal skills. And you know, I say it all the time, if there's anybody in this room, and it's kind of different with the reserve component, I understand to a certain extent, but if there's anybody in this room that thinks they're a lawyer who just happens to be a soldier, paralegal who just happens to be a soldier, you realize, you've got to realize that you're wrong. It's the other way around. Okay? Even with your triple professions that you do, that you break your civilian work down in what you do, I understand. And I applaud you for it. We'll talk about that in a little bit in a minute as well. A current JAG Corps snapshot. We've hovered around the 10,000 mark. What's interesting or what's important about that? Well, how big is our Army? Somebody shout it out. 450. Including reserve component. Million man Army, right? So we're 10,000. Less than 1% of the total Army is dedicated to providing all of the legal advice, support across all the components, civilian, military, enlisted, officer. That's pretty amazing when you think about it. And we're constantly fighting the desire for cuts from those who don't know us. There's nobody on the Army staff that really wants to cut us significantly. And when we're asked to cut and we come in with specific responses to each of those cuts, there's support, broad support across the Army staff, the Army leadership to keep us. But I can tell you what you're not going to see is significant growth in our ranks. Because growth is going where right now? If you're the Chief Staff of the Army, Secretary of the Army, where are you going to put people? You're going to put them in divisions, corps, divisions, brigades, I should say brigades, divisions, corps last. It's the war fighters, you're going to put recruiters, drill sergeants, because we want to recruit more people. We're having trouble recruiting our numbers. And then you got to train the bigger numbers that you bring in. So that's why, if you haven't seen the Army manning guidance, it's important that you take a look at it. Because you've got recruiters and you've got drill sergeants on those top lines. You've got the SFACs on the top lines. And you also, certainly brigades, you know, are up there as well. But interestingly, we've gone back to the combat training centers. OCs and OTs are up there. So First Army, Div East and Div West, that has the training mission for a lot of our reserve units to go through, is now Category 1, priority fill for those positions. And we'll talk about that as an example of where I need your help. Recruiting and selecting, still, look at the number change. Look at from fiscal year 16, the number applied to 17, 18, and 19. That's incredible, those numbers. So, of course, it makes it that much more difficult because our percentages really haven't, I mean, they obviously declined from the 69%, but they've stayed pretty steady there, 36 to 45% selection needs. So that's a tough cut. So if you're sitting in these seats and you've got people that are working for you, we're still able to take the best of the breaks. Don't let anybody kid you that are just like the Secretary of the Army's guidance is. I got it that we're trying harder to bring more people into the Army, but we are not going to sacrifice quality for quantity. We want the quality to remain the same. And proof of that is standards have not gone back. If anything, standards are increasing. With the advent of the OPAT, occupational physical assessment test, and the new ACFT, we'll talk about that as well too. Where you've gone and what you've done. We all know that deployment opportunities are decreasing just because Iraq and Afghanistan, we don't have the numbers that we used to have. But I tell this audience, I tell every audience I talk to, if you want the opportunity to mobilize, if you want the opportunity to deploy, you need to do one thing. Let somebody know. Whether it's Colonel Summers when you have a meeting with them, whether it's your first line supervisor, whether it's your SJ, your LOD commander, let somebody know that you want to deploy. There's opportunities out there. Trust me, we'll find some place for you. It's one of our frustrations, and it might be on the next slide, yeah, the mobilization history, and I'll ask Marilyn to make some comments, if she'd like to, but, so the boss and I, General PD and I, all of your package when you're gonna mobilize and so forth to deploy come to General PD for ultimate approval. They roll through me. What we don't want is to see one person has volunteered for a position. We want to be able to have recommendations from the field and be able to pick from any number of people for the job. Because our fear is if there's only one, well, are we just taking that person? They may be the best qualified person, but we just don't know. Are we taking that person because that's all we can get? And so I'm telling you, as the leadership of our reserve component, what I've said before, your other leaders have heard it and so forth. Our expectation of you is that you are looking at mobilization and deployment opportunities. You are identifying people in your force, in your ranks, that need that opportunity, that would do extremely well at the job. You need to put your arm around them and explain to them why they need to do that. I got it, that it's difficult. And we'll do whatever we can to encourage employers to give people the time. We all know there's laws that require that, but laws and what really happens in some places, I understand. But we'll help out. The boss and I are more than willing to call employers. We'll break through the difficulties you have. And I'm not downplaying. But you got to understand, if you're wearing the uniform, if you're on the team, when we need you to go in and play a particular position in a particular game, we need folks to step on the field. And what we've told our LOD commanders is, if we can't get noms out of you all to fill billets, what's going to happen? This is a nuclear option. LOD commanders are going to go fill those billets. Okay? Or the nuclear option is, which we haven't wanted, is to go to SecDef and to do mobilization. We will force people to mobilize. I don't mean to be too serious. I know we're not going to have to do that. The last time I addressed this, we took care of it, and we had numerous applications for positions. We seem to have dipped in the last couple of months in the packets that we're looking at right now. Plenty of opportunities to go places to mobilize the backfill. Anything more on that?
Yes, sir, just one quick comment. DJ talked about how we're not going to grow. My fear is we're going to shrink if we have 50% of the reserve inventory doing 100% of the modes. That's why it's so important for people that have not been deployed or mowed yet to go ahead and talk to your LOD commander, or if you're embedded, to talk to your FJA and get on a battle roster where you go out the door. Because if the Army Reserve says, if the Army Reserve looks at us across Social Security number and see that 50% of us have only been used, they'll take the other 50% and push them down into other branches and other units. So please get your employer ready, get your family ready, tell them, you know what, it's my turn to step up. I know I have to volunteer because that's the way the MOVE rules say, but it's my turn, and please talk to your LOD commander about getting on the battle roster. Thank you.
Another piece is, if we see the same people and you know who you are, some are in this room, and it's a good thing. I love the fact that some people are willing to step up over and over and over. The argument that I have with the boss every time he sees that is, okay, if we're moving the same person and there's a need for somebody back to back to back to do this job, maybe we should turn it into an active duty bill. And then we don't have to fight the battle of trying to find somebody. We can just assign somebody from the active component. And what does that do? That reduces the opportunities. We really got opportunities for you. So he's not doing it, but I can tell you, if we continue to have this problem, that'll be one of the alternatives that he looks into, and I won't be able to push back. Okay, enough for that. So the question we asked, we started out with our be ready. And I understand what we got back is said it enough. We understand be ready, but be ready for what? How do we? So a couple of slides to kind of talk about that. Ready for what? Well, we certainly have seen all of these things. I'm not going to go through them. We read about them in the paper every single day. You can ask anyone in leadership position within OSD and the Army, and they'll have a different opinion as to what the biggest threat is. Secretary Gates, I love saying this, former Secretary of Defense, when asked what the biggest threat to the Department of Defense was as he was leaving. Anybody remember what he said? It's the most unique thing. Not anything up there on the slide. No. Budget tied to healthcare costs. He said healthcare costs were the single thing that would bring the Department of Defense to this need. Think about it, because we had people coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan all over the world before this. We have been able to, with our increase in medical capability, keep more people alive on the battlefield, and they're coming back with more traumatic injuries, and we have a solemn duty to take care of the rest of their lives. I thought that was very interesting that a SecDef wouldn't look at any of this, would actually look at healthcare costs. So budget is certainly tied to it, trying to fight all of these enemies, take care of our soldiers at the same time, with a huge amount of our budget going into the medical arena to take care of it. And some would argue we're not doing enough at all. Multi-domain operations, if you're not familiar with it, I would recommend that you get familiar with it. Simply put, it's no longer the CT fight, the counterterrorism fight. We're now back to large peer-on-peer, large force-on-large force battles. That's what we're doing in the combat training centers. That's what our OCs have to learn out there. They have to put units that go through the rotations, through their paces, understanding it. And so there's significant questions that you have to ask yourself. And while I ask you to read what General Milley says, if I may, let me just slide to this very quickly. So here are some points. The G3 came and talked to us. The Army G3 came and talked to us, and he said, these are some of the challenges that we're directed to address along their second and third order effects. Are we ready to operate in a near-peer conflict where there aren't any communications? And the boss has beat us up about that. We need to be ready to, and I can tell you, our adversaries are going to take our comms out if we don't take them out. Proof of that was, as we're coming into this auditorium this morning, the internet went out. And suddenly we're not going to be able to play the national anthem. I know that's low scale, but it's just a prime example that an environment like this, a non-combat environment where we have difficulty with comms, you can only imagine what's going to happen when we go down range. And that's the first thing our adversaries are going to take out. So it goes back to when I was a captain, coming in and being able to have your op law handbook in one pocket, and 6-27, which will be coming out, law of land warfare in your other pocket. And that's the way we're going to be doing research, old school way. Are you aware of the differences between the past ROEs, rules of engagement and counterterrorism era, and the new dynamic posed by near-peer decisive engagements and multi-domain operations? Are you familiar with the evolving rules of engagement in cyberspace? He says our adversaries are simultaneously employing non-kinetic capabilities across multiple domains, delivering real-time effects in public opinion and international media, while interfering with national decision processes, infrastructure, and support to and from strategic partners. I mean, when you get people that are really studying it to come talk to you, the future battlefield is pretty scary. Forget about the possibility of nuclear weapons if we're fighting somebody like North Korea and so forth. It is just what's going to happen on what, it's not going to be the counterterrorism fight that we saw in Iraq and Afghanistan. So we need to be ready. And how are you ready? We'll talk about it on some of these slides, but it's educating yourself so that when you see anything pop up on a slide like this, you say, I understand. And then what else is your responsibility in addition to understanding all of the things that are on the slide as a leader sitting in the room? What's your responsibility? To make sure you're focused, to make sure that they understand all this stuff. They're reading what they need to, that you're having the right training. Because we get pushed all the time. And I'm not trying to say it's not our responsibility, but everybody wants the JAG school to do all this training. And I can tell you there's only so much white space on the school's calendar. There's only so many people we can push with TDY dollars. Right now, the Army is pushing back that everybody's TDY budget will be cut 10% in an effort to save money and so forth. So instead of more dollars coming for training, less dollars are coming. So what does that mean? Where does the training have to occur? Might not be able to come to places like this. You're going to have to do it at home stations. So it's the operational level training, the unit level training, and then the third leg of the stool is individual training. Folks just need to do it on their own, figure out what it is, and we'll talk about that on the subsequent slide here as well. Our priorities, again, ours have stayed the same, and they're nested with the chief's priorities and with the secretary's priorities. And so the first and foremost, as you know, the chief has said, priority number one is readiness. There are no other number ones. So that's our first, but yet, as we talked about on the first slide, you can be ready for the daily operations that we have, those nights like, while simultaneously looking to the future and always taking care of you. We've always been extremely good at that. Here's our constants in the battle to do that, represented by the North Star. North Star being the guiding star that's out there. That's what we're looking at, our constants. Profession of arms, profession of law, we talked about that already. But here's some other terms that you may not. Mastery of the law. What have we talked about in our new career model? What do we want you to be? Two things. Versatile, okay, which is the next step from broadly skilled. I'd argue that, and we can have a conversation about it. Versatile is not the same thing as broadly skilled. We want you to be versatile, and we want you to be, seriously? Experts, thank you. So, experts, so in other words, the way I say it is we want you to be jacks of all trades. Managers ask you questions, clients ask you questions, you can't say, sorry, I'm a one-trick pony. I do military justice, but I don't do anything else. Our commanders aren't going to accept that. Our clients aren't going to accept that. So you have to be, from the prior, broadly skilled enough, versatile enough to understand, to know where to go to do the research, to get the answer for your client, but you also should be experts in at least one of those fields, if not more. And that's where we're different from General Arpino and General Ayers. We believe that in specialization, people can specialize. We're not against it, but specialization will mean doing a job in that area, popping back out to do something else to broaden yourself, to remain as versatile as you can, going back into the area, popping back out. Those are the types of things. And so, General Chifulo can talk to you about those jobs, but it's bouncing around from different jobs. What we don't want, and I think you understand that, is folks that get into an LOD and want to stay there for years and years and years. You saw General Arpino was pushing people out, and Marilyn will talk on a subsequent slide about the amount of time, in jobs, which is roughly 2 to 3 years. Certainly no more than that. So, subject matter expertise, principled counsel at all times, that's where people of character. Folks look to us, as you know. You know that, for the integrity, to be the honest with us, and the advice that we give. But the big piece here is on the servant leadership, is just taking care of your people. Is simply put, realizing your people are not there to take care of you and to do things for you, but vice versa. That's what you're put in this leadership position to do, and that's our expectation. And stewardship is just our responsibility for the future of the Corps, for taking care of our Corps now and in the future. So, my number one priority, and General Milley always says, certainly paying preparation as well. How to be ready? You've seen the Vince Lombardi slide, hopefully before, Lawson might use it all the time. There's a Hall of Fame football coach with a Super Bowl winning team starts off the next year by saying, gentlemen, this is the football. Moves from there on. You know that we can start with the basics. Blocking and tackling, not just things football now, but as we all say, it's the blocking and tackling. Learn the fundamentals of who we are and what we do. And then we'll talk about some of the other things in that first block. We've talked about self-improvement. We can't just tell you to do that self-improvement. It's the training. We've got to give you the resources for that. And we have some subject to talk about. And then team improvement. That's what we talked about with the operational training, where you as leaders ensure that your folks are ready. That you identify what training gaps they have. This is what OER counseling is all about. It's OER counseling. Okay, we see you. You see yourself as here. We see you as there. What is it that you need to do to bridge that gap to get where you think you are and where we think you should be? That's very difficult to do sometimes. To pull people in and say, I know you think you're here, and in A-, we've got you at a B, solid B at best. And then their question to you is, well, how do I get to B- or A? And if you're not prepared to answer that as a leader, if you're not prepared to do that in your counseling, then why do we do counseling? Why do we have the OER system? I'm not down on you, I see this happen across the force, I'm guilty of it as well too. So I ask you to think about when the last time you had counseling, OER, SDR, that was truly beneficial, that you left and you said, wow, I got something that helped. Hopefully it was your last counseling, if we're doing it right. And then if you're asking that question, everybody who leaves your office with this number of counseling sessions, you should ask yourself that question as well. Did that person get something out? Did I do it well? Because it's so easy to list the 9 things that everybody does right. Oh, you're the greatest thing since sliced bread. I'll tell you, I've never seen anyone better. But to tell them where their weaknesses are and how to fix them is a little bit more difficult. And that's what you need. We've got the ACFT coming up. Final decisions have not been made on this. I was with a group of judge advocates and paralegals yesterday. This discussion came up, and the question came up that, you know, somebody read in an article, and it was out there that the lawyers are the ones that are saying no. This ACFT, not because we don't want to do these exercises, and trust me, I did the sled pull. I was saying no after I did that damn sled pull. But we're saying no. Well, we're not saying no. What we're identifying is you're not there yet. We love the test. Who's watched the video that explains why we develop, how we develop this, and why each of these exercises is necessary? Okay, if you haven't watched that video, and I'd love Sergeant Major, because we got to show here, you understand why we're doing the exercises, how they train you for or replicate what we're doing in combat. And I think it's I'm telling you, I've had a group of spouses that was like, what's this test all about? Why are we doing it? What's the matter with the current test? I showed them that video, and they all understood that push-ups and sit-ups and running just don't get at and don't replicate what we do in combat, but this test does. The problem is, if you make a pronouncement, and the Secretary and the Chief have said, this test is here, thumbs up, it's going to stay. But the question is, are there alternate events if you can't do an event? And what's the grading system like? That's where the rubber meets the road. That's where the lawyers have said, until you figure that out, this is not ready for prime time. So you can have people training to do this and you know, figure out the gaps and seams, especially in the reserve component, trying to get all that equipment to your post-council stations so you can do it. So we can work on that. But in terms of it being the scoring mechanism, scoring criteria and so forth, if I was a betting man, I would think we're going to keep the legacy PT testing as the scoring mechanism. Because we've got it down to a science, we know how to score it, but yet you will still take this, probably on a pass-fail basis. So that if you can pass it, you know you're ready for combat. Okay, now, on the pull-up, it may be 1. That may be the standard, I don't know. We're going to figure that out. That's why they've got it out in 69 different kinds, testing it right now, with metrics to come back in and so forth to figure it out. I think you can make it, and it will stay gender neutral in school. Because look at what we've done for gender integration. We have put females in infantry units, and we have, our motto has been, if you can meet the standard, it doesn't matter what gender you are. So we can't then move back and go back to the old days of, at least in this is my mind, not anybody on the Army staff, very difficult to go back to making 2 different scorings. Age neutral? I got a problem with that. No matter how much I train and how hard I try, I get out there with guys like Steve, where's Steve? There he is. And when I used to try to run with him at Fort Hood and so forth, and as I got older, man, I'm 57 years old now. There's no way I can keep up with the 22 and so forth. So I would think there's going to be changes in the age categories of grading systems, but we got to figure that out. And again, that's just my own personal opinion. I love the test. If you haven't done it, I was down at Fort Stewart for an Article 6 last week, and their training was this. It was not just these 6 events or things designed to get you stronger, probably 12 events total, and in between every 90 seconds of doing it, we ran, you know, a pretty good lap, and then came back and came down. So I got to tell you, after I did the sled pull, I couldn't even remotely think about trying to run 2 miles with my legs. And so, but we will be able to do that. It's like the OPAC. Anybody know what happened? That test that was going to decide or determine what branch you could qualify for. And we had lots of our soldiers in basic training, or before basic training, or recruits failing the OPAC. Why do you think they failed? Okay. Yeah, not familiar with it. No training. How many high schoolers hang out with medicine balls in their room, just sit around throwing medicine balls? Not a lot. But they found that if recruiters got them in, introduced them to the exercises, showed them the proper technique, and they went home and they practiced it, man, the rates went through the roof of folks that were doing it extremely well. That's all it's about. We got to get the equipment, we got to give people opportunity to practice with it, and you'll see that some people who think, nah, you can't do it, it will be done. Okay, Military Justice Act of 16, I was with a group yesterday who had lots of questions about this. You should be familiar with it. We spent lots of time, resources, money and so forth, putting our mobile training teams together for this and so forth. If you're not familiar with the changes to MJA 16, the most significant changes in 50, 60 years to the UCMJ, I encourage you to do so. But I'll just leave you with this. Initial signs from our Chief of Criminal Law, Colonel Wilson, are that it's working well. The subpoenas that have actually been sent out to places like Google, Facebook, and other places have all been complied, which is a great sign. There's 2 of these special courts martial, which are some people are referring to as shorts martial. The boss does not want them called that, so I probably shouldn't have just used that term. But there's 2 out there right now, and we expect more. Brigade commanders are seeing it, and I anticipate that they will follow up if it works as advertised, that they can get soldiers to court martial much more quickly at their level. Some other things with panels and so forth will just remain to be seen as we try to get good news so far. How many watched the congressional hearings a couple weeks ago where all of the service TJACs got to talk? I know you did, Rebecca. Yeah, Sergeant Major and I were there. So what was there were 2 panels. The first panel was victims and folks that are opponents to our current system. Second panel was service TJACs and the DOD rep from SAPRO. What was the biggest bombshell out of that hearing? Anybody recall? You all need to get out of the daily night fight. Look up Senator McSally, brand new senator. She was a representative to Senator Martin's seat and so forth. So she's on the personnel subcommittee of the Senate Armed Services Committee. And as I understand it, I didn't realize this before, the first female combat pilot in the Air Force. What did she indicate? She was sexually assaulted. Actually used the word rape in there and shocked everybody because they didn't know that. So instant credibility on the Hill, on this issue, on the Senate Armed Services Committee by indicating, hey, I've been there, I was a victim, and I didn't report it. But the best thing to come out of all of it was, having been in, having been a commander, having been the victim of sex assault, she said, I do not believe taking commanders out of the military justice system is the way to go. So, and I can tell you, she has grabbed this, like many on the Hill does, this is now her issue. She has asked for OSD to set up a task force to look at issues, ways of getting after this. So if you think there was focus before, it was incredible. There is now even greater focus. We'll start to hear lots of things about it. And we can talk more about that. So here's what I talked about when I mentioned we want to give you the resources to help you out. I would simply say, read, write, and speak. That's our stock and trade orders, right? That's what we do. Our mind is our weapon. So you got to constantly keep that weapon sharp, ready to go. And we provide you. How many have been on the lifelong learning website? Okay, that's good. It gets better every time I ask the question. But unless it's until it's 100%, I want to focus you to go there. Okay, so there's your website right there. There's the link to it and so forth. You'll have these slides. Like others have said, if you want to take a picture of this, great. But the material is there. You can add to the material as well if you see things that are good there. So we strongly encourage you to use this. If you're going to give a briefing, if it's just, put things on there all the time that we think are worthwhile for you. And then, of course, our Mill Suite, we're constantly posting things on Mill Suite, our leadership team. up in OTJ and down in USARCLC is making that stuff available for you. So, this is what Truman said about reading. I firmly believe in. And so I just highlight right in the middle, and I know you can't see it, is a book called The Leader's Bookshelf. How many have read that book? Okay. I encourage you to go buy that book, and I don't get any kickback. I know there's no money coming into me, but I read it. What's great about it is the author is Admiral Stavridis, retired 4-star. He's now working for a think tank, and he and a fellow author surveyed 50 retired senior general officers from all of the services, 4 stars, 3 stars, and said, give us the best reads that you've had, give us an OML in there. And then they tabulated all of that, and they came up with 50 top books. And then they do an analysis of each book, a short analysis. They let the person that recommended it as their #1 book talk about it, why they liked it, and then they go through what you can learn from the book. So just reading that book is fantastic. But my goal, as people have seen in my office, is to read all 50 books. I'll tell you where I am right now, and then put them on my bookshelf with an index card in each one. And encourage my folks to come grab a book, sign it out on the index card, take it, read it, and then bring it back. So I've got the Leader's Bookshelf there. It's more than 50 books because they actually, so that people didn't get turned off by the fact that, oh, this is the older generation, they read things differently. They went to a bunch of OBC students and said, what were your 50 favorite books? They got 50 from there. How many do you think were on both lists? I find this interesting. I thought there'd be more. I thought that a classic's a classic, there'll be certain books and so forth that folks in the military think they need to read. And it wasn't. Only 7 books were the same. So we got a list of 93 books that are fantastic recommendations. There's just some of them, and it's not all military history. Killer Angels was the #1 book, my favorite book, so I tend to agree with this. But I pulled a couple of other things out. I'm reading Lincoln Team Arrivals right now. That is a very, it's a fantastic book. I love it, but I'm into that type of history. My wife wouldn't even touch it with a 10-foot pole. 700 pages, a very thick book to get through, but fantastic. But there's books like The Connecticut Yankee and King Arthur's Court, written by Mark Twain, fantastic. And other books as well. If I was writing that list, I'd throw The Catcher in the Rye right up there as well, too. A bunch of books that I've read in high school and college, Catch-22 and some others. So I just encourage you to take a look at it, add some other books to it, create your own Leader's Bookshelf, read them, and pass them on to your folks. Because what we found is when people read, they're much more likely to write about what they've read, or they kind of catch the bug to write. And then when you're reading and writing, suddenly you want to tell people about it, and you're encouraged to speak because you actually have things to talk about. And that's what our lifelong learning website is about too, is to give you materials that you can use to brief. I could put tons of slides up here on things. Here's certainly, if I was there, people have heard me say this before. I listened to a podcast, and it was General Brown, USARCLC commander, who was asked a number of questions by this military leadership. And one of the books, or one of the things he was asked about was leadership and books that he's read. He said, I'm with leaders of think tanks, I'm with senior individuals from the administration, foreign leaders all the time, great leaders, and I ask them all the time, what are some of the best books you've read? What prepares you to be a leader? He said, overwhelmingly, it came back. People would say, you have one of the best books in the military on leadership. It was ADR 6-22. And I know a lot of our NCOs have dug into it. In your courses, you're required to take a look at it. But I highly recommend that everybody pulls it off on the shelf. Instead of spending all kinds of money on leadership books, take a book that you've got for free, where people have spent years and years and years putting it together. And USARCLC was amazing. They had an OPD schedule put together where they were briefing every section and subsection out of that book, some different speakers. So I knew about it because I was asked to come down to USARCLC and talk about sound judgment, one of the subsections of leadership in there. I thought it'd be great to have a lawyer come talk about sound judgment and so forth, and how we exercise it and help other people exercise it. So some great reads there as well. And then, of course, we want you to speak and engage. For many reasons, it strengthens you, it educates others. We want to tell our story. want to get out there. Simply put, the boss's mantra on this is, especially in the international and operational law arena, there's too many think tanks, there's too many special interest groups, and I'm not denigrating it, Human Rights Watch, you got CRC and so forth, they get out and write, and they speak, and they give their point. Right now, the big push is, one of many, is to try to get explosives, the use of explosives within cities out. That's what they do, and I understand why they want to do that. When you look at the death toll in places like Syria, and certainly Iraq and Afghanistan, and so forth, they simply say, why? Why do we need such senseless loss of civilian lives? Because you have enemies like ISIS that do what? They hide themselves in amongst the population and so forth, and to attempt to take them out, there's going to be collateral damage, there's going to be loss of life. But I would ask you this, especially in the battlefield that we're going to now, do you think it would be even remotely possible to fight, to prosecute a war if you weren't able to use explosives in cities? And don't we have a framework, a legal framework? And I'm hoping you all know the three things that you would look at. Necessity and proportionality that ensures that we're not, everybody views us because we don't get out there and tell our story. Everybody views us as, hey, as long as we kill the enemy, it doesn't matter who else we kill. You know what? Drop the bomb and let God sort it all out. Nothing could be further from the truth. We know that, but we're not out there telling our story. So people that are not educated on the issue believe what they hear from these other groups. And so the boss is looking for you, especially this environment that's out in the civilian sector all the time, recognizing where we can engage. We want you to engage. And then, right, here's all the opportunities. These are just some of the military places, but there's plenty of places, obviously, in the civilian sector. I encourage you to do so, and we'll give you all the assistance that you need to make that happen. Our future core, get another quote from General Milley. It's kind of like the old, you don't have to be faster than the bear, you just need to be faster than the person next to you, right? We don't have to get right, we just have to get it less wrong than the enemy. That core modernization, in line with the modernization of, and I can sit here, this is part of our strategic initiatives, and talk about it all day long, I won't do that. I can tell you that we're taking a look at a force structure, because we've got legacy force structures. That's what our military justice pilot program is all about. If you try, you've heard me say this before, if you tried 2,000 cases in 1990, you went down to 1,000 cases, this is on the active duty side, in 2010, and then dropped again to 600 in 2017, but you still have the legacy structure of 300 trial counsel prosecuting those 600 cases. You'd have to ask yourself, why? Why do we need as many people in that particular arena? Are there things that we can do to try to reshape the force, restructure the force? And that's just one of many things we're looking into. General Chifula can talk to you about what we're doing on the reserve component side as well, too, to look at force structure there as well, to make changes. So these are not just on the active duty side, but on the reserve component side as well. Practice area redesign, I think you're all familiar with this, the kind of restructuring how we did things. The biggest thing is just identifying that instead of calling it international operational law, we've now included, it's not just a name change, it's actually adding in all those military intelligence brigades, our folks that work there, all our folks who work in the special operations arena, burgeoning area of the law in our cyber, folks that are working there and in cybercom and so forth. All of those fall under the umbrella of national security. So the name international operational law as an overall is going away, and it's now national security law. But we broke it down this way. We understand TDS falls both on the military justice side and in soldier, but essentially it's legal support for soldiers, so we put it on those sides as well. 6-27 I mentioned briefly. We're in the final stages of that. We anticipate that to come out here shortly, but I think I probably said the same thing this time later. It's just been incredibly hard because DoD put out their law of war manual and they see ours as kind of a challenge to that. Anybody seen the size of the DoD law of war manual? Pretty thick. What we're looking for 6-27 to be instead is, again, a law handbook, something that you can put in your cargo pocket that's more of a practitioner-friendly, practitioner's guide to those issues that you can take with you. Whereas the DoD law of war manual on point. I think there's 4 specific areas where we have slight disagreements, and we're trying to resolve those 4 areas when we get this out. There's your principal audiences, our ground forces, Army and Marine. If you haven't seen the OLKI, what we're calling the OLKI, which is the acronym for this, I strongly encourage you to take a look at it. The folks at the schoolhouse have seen it. I think there's 250 of them that arrived. We're working on it. What it's designed to do is provide you assistance. The general PD says, hey, you've got to be prepared to operate in an analog environment. Well, this is a device that powers itself up through solar energy and so forth, and has lots of other capabilities to get you through the fight when you lose connectivity on certain things. Tested by, I think that's Lieutenant Colonel Ted Martin, the Chief of Plano, in that photo there. So I apologize, I did not come prepared to tell you what the distribution will be like in the reserve component, but I know that we've directed them to take a look at it as well, too. It's not just an active duty system. Our third priority are people. We talked about briefly, the career model and the changes we're making, but we want to talk about talent management as well, too. And this applies to both sides. We're strongly, very interested in talent management. Simply put, we recruit people and so forth, all the way around to retaining them and everything else that's in between. The bottom line is, we need to do a better job with talent management. And so what we want is, we want talent scouts. That's your SJAs, your LOD commanders, the judges that see you practice. Anybody that witnesses good people, or occasionally somebody who may not be keeping the mark, to identify these people. I had judges walk in all the time and say, hey, I just have one of your counsel when I was the Chief of Justice or Deputy MSJ, one of your counsel in there, and they are fantastic. And I highly recommend that they go on to bigger and better things within the military justice arena, or whatever it might be. That's what we need. They go to bench builders, and those are your bench builders right there. We need bench builders in the reserve component as well, too. And we've got people embedded in those areas. And those folks feed PP&T. And so between that, and again, they develop schematics of, and the example I use all the time. So we want COCOM SJAs. We want people to be competitive for those COCOM SJA positions. And what we find when we go, the coffers are empty. There's nobody who really has the skill set to do that job, or to be a chief of environmental law, or a chief of whatever, labor and employment law, you name it. Because we haven't focused on talent management, identifying what are those jobs that you have throughout your career, you bounce in and out in that field, so that by the time you become a senior leader, either on the reserve or on the enlisted side or the officer side, you're prepared to do the senior leader job. So that's what we're focused. We can talk more about talent management if you'd like to. There's our career model, and obviously expert reversals. Okay, that was the down and dirty. Now I'm going to talk and I'll turn it over to now I'm back.
Good morning, gentlemen. I'm Osvaldo Martinez. I have the privilege of being your original sergeant major. Maybe it's a privilege to be here today. It's always good to come to the on-site, catch up with some folks, to see the training that's going on, and to see the family, the team as a whole, all confident. I appreciate that. Just very briefly for 1 second, I want to take the opportunity to brag on somebody that I got to catch up with this morning, that I had an opportunity to serve with while I was at Fort Bliss. The soldier came to us from AIT, which is the AIT Reporting School, and this individual worked extremely hard every single day. You see his development as he developed. I got to see him become a sergeant as IPCS. And so at some point, his time was up, and he decided to separate back the component. And I got the news, somebody emailed me today, Sergeant Major, so decided to get out of the Army, and we're going to miss him. Here we are. And so today, to my surprise, I got an opportunity to see Sergeant Miller. Sergeant Miller, I want to thank you publicly for the soldier that you are, for what you did for us, and what you're going to continue to do. Sergeant Miller is currently with 9th LOD. He's with the 9th LOD. Not just that, but he's also an officer. And this is a conversation that we have when we're at Fort Bliss. So I'm excited to see you're doing what you say we're going to do. Cool? So thank you very much. We're going to talk quickly about the prevention program. Last year, the boss approved 100 training seats, and we filled all 100. And you may ask, hey, why is this so important? Hey, at the end of the day, our responsibility as paralegals are to support our judge advocates and to make sure that we can ensure that legal services are being delivered to our commanders. So this credentialing program allows that to happen, allows our paralegals to further develop their skills in what we do for you. So I share this with you as leaders because I want to ask for your support in ensuring that you're asking your soldiers what they're doing to develop themselves and that they take the credentialing program into consideration. They're going to become better paralegals for us in the Army. And it also helps in this particular audience, the reserve component, potential in their personal life. Many states have recently taken over a program called LLT, Limited Licensed Legal Technicians, and this is where some states are allowing paralegals to represent clients in courts as a result of the need for representation to go up and the amount of attorneys going down. Many state bars are recognizing that there's a need for more support, so they're allowing paralegals to do that. But in order to do that in these states, you've got to be a certified paralegal. So I ask that you talk to your soldiers and no cost to them and see whether or not they're interested in doing this. We have an opportunity for growth in the JAB Corps, just a little bit. The boss is not growing much, and we're not. But we're able to grow in e-discovery, and what that will allow us to do is to get online with the rest of the legal system in the world. Most law firms have e-discovery that's required by law. The Army doesn't for some reason. We haven't caught up. And so this summer in August, we're excited to say that we're going to actually have 2 paralegals show up to use SALS, and they're going to do training with industry. There's a private organization that's going to be out there who is willing to do all our training. They're going to train us, get us certified, and those soldiers will return back to the SALS and do e-discovery for our litigation teams. So we're growing that. Hey, last thing I want to cover is our training piece. Our NCO Academy is represented here today, and they're going to train your soldiers on a lot of good subjects over the weekend. We are focusing and we're spending a lot of time and resources on training your soldiers. And so I ask that you support that. At the end of the day, it's to support you in doing your jobs as judge advocates. We have expanded the amount of training seats at the NCO Academy almost by double for this FY. 130 soldiers that you see on that slide are going to be able to attend SLC. That is almost double. It's all about making sure that we are ready to meet the needs of the Army. We're short on our NCOs, and a lot of the reason that we're short on our NCO strength is because of the implementation of the STEP program, Select, Train, Educate, Promote program in the Army, which now requires NCOs to attend the appropriate NCOES prior to getting promoted. And so our problem was in the past that we didn't have enough throughput at the schoolhouse. The schoolhouse now is giving us the seats to train, so we're going to be able to get to our numbers. Let's just make sure that our soldiers are ready to go to school when it's time to go to school. There's a lot of prerequisites that need to be made. And so I ask leaders to ask their soldiers as they prepare to go to ALC, SLC, have you completed the correct prerequisites, whether that be SSD or DLC, or whether that be our IPs. All right. So with that, hey, I'm excited to be here. I am here for the day. So if you have any questions, please feel free to hit me up and we can talk.
Well, good morning, everybody. Very, very happy to be here. I'm Certified Ron Prescott. I'm very happy to be a part of the Republic. I sit in the Office of Judge Advocate General, Personal Plans and Training Office. Very, very happy to spend the next 3 days with you and get to know you and see the issues and to be available to discuss anything that you would like to discuss in terms of this slide up here is talking about warrant officers, and you'll realize that as far as the things that warrant officer performance, legal administrative performance in the organizations are nested across 3 lines of effort, similar to how the JAG represented 3 lines of effort that in the SAC Army and the Chief of Staff of the Army pointed out. We've got a commitment to veterans, we've got a commitment to our people, we've got a commitment to our people. Okay, and so within your footprints, what we are essentially trying to do is to align ourselves with these readiness priorities in support of legal operations and in support of your mission, and to help you to move the ball forward. What you see here in terms of our organization for personnel and our organization in terms of our commitment, we want to engage with the staff personnel across the footprint that, a lot of us are good integrators in terms of discussing the things that the staff are bringing forward and aligning those discussions with, legal operations, and then parlaying that information back to our staff members and to the office in order to align those readiness priorities and to keep those things consistent. And so we're good at doing those. Then we want to be able to plan, prepare, and support, the increasing complex legal operations. And that means, looking at the systems within our footprint for legal assistance, for case management, and ensure that those things are meeting the standard to support readiness and the future fight. Okay? Aligned with some of that as well, we have to take a good look in terms of our own professional accountability and in terms of professional military education and civilian education, and ensuring that we're getting after those things within the organization to provide, of course, a good environment for our folks and to help our commanders and staff judge advocates make decisions. With our commitment to our people and that DJ has talked about, right? We want to develop and sustain, legal HR systems. And our commitment to our people in terms of that, what happens in many places, we want to recognize our folks. We want to ensure that there are good performance management systems in place, be involved in things like TPMAP, new systems there, and also look for opportunities to recognize our folks. We got many civilian employees that stay within our footprints, and sometimes, we need to get after them in terms of an award, something for them, and making sure that their evaluations and their schooling is good. And in terms of our judge advocate personnel, ensure that we are part of that top management process and that training management process where we're looking at where you are in terms of the continuing legal education requirements and management and training requirements to get you where you need to be so that you can be that versatile officer and that expert. And so within your footprints, that's how we're getting after that. And of course, we are committed to supporting you in the future fight. Okay? And that means looking at the Army from a strategic perspective in terms of, plans, budgets, etc. And that is both on the manpower side and on the personnel side. Looking long range to see where we should be in terms of, law office modernization, as DJ pointed out, looking at, how we should structure ourselves because we are looking at a legacy structure. Legal administrators are essential in understanding that and in helping you to understand what the footprint should look like in the future. We have an interesting array of issues that is, happening within our cohort right now. And we're trying to get after some of those things with knowledge management. And you've heard a lot about, in terms of our future support to the Army, looking at knowledge management to ensure that we are bridging the gap between the individuals in the organization with the tacit knowledge to ensure that that information is getting passed on. I was having a good conversation with Ms. Rebecca Stuyvesant yesterday, and how many of you are familiar with the 737-100 MAX, airplane that, went down in Ethiopia? A lot of us are familiar. And that, so she recounted as, things were going on. The black box basically, laid out in terms of the investigation. There were the pilots the day before, recognized that there was this nosedive issue, right, that was happening. But the one pilot that was in there, he understood, hey, the problem. He had been through the simulators. He knew what was going on. And so he said, hey, let's disengage this automatic system that's going on. And they were fine. Just the day before, they were able to, take off, land the aircraft, everything was well. Then the next day, new group of pilots come in who have never seen, one of them hadn't been on a simulator of this type with a 737-100 MAX. Didn't understand the issues that people had already seen, before, the day before. And what happened? The outcome was when they were faced with a situation with the nosedive going down, they didn't know, to disengage the automatic system and then to take over, and that the outcome was catastrophic, right? And so what we want to do in terms of our KM process is to ensure that we are bridging those gaps and filling those areas so that we don't have catastrophic outcomes, so that we can pass the knowledge that we have, for each other forward. Again, with our commitment to the future, we're also looking at, from the legal administrator one officer perspective, we're, now looking at our recruiting strategies. We're opening the aperture somewhat in recruiting to outside the service and outside the branch, and that is going to be a change for a lot of folks. But We've got issues in terms of our recruitment numbers for warrant officers coming in to be legal administrators. And so that requires us to take a look somewhat outside. And so if any of you have people in your formations that are interested in making that transition, of course, I would welcome you to talk to me in the next couple of days so that we can have a good conversation about this and that we can talk about how legal administrators, in terms of nesting with, TJAC's priorities and with your priorities can be an effective enablers within your organizations to support you and to support your efforts. So thank you very much. I'll be here until Sunday with you. And if you reach out and talk to me. More than that.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm going to give you a break. Go ahead and stand up for just a minute.